Dr. Simon, thank you so much for being here at the Arab Center and for attending the winter school. First, give us a little bit of your impression of the winter school so far.
Well, thank you for having me. I think it's been great. It's always nice to be back in Doha. Much nicer weather than the grey, miserable skies of Lancaster.
Right.
But it's great to be here, and it's great to have such an intense set of discussions about sectarianism in a range of different places, contexts, times, spaces, learning from people.
It's very broad.
Yeah, exactly, and that's wonderful. And as we've discussed, there's been a real focus in the literature on Lebanon, Iraq, Bahrain, etc., which is the focus of my project. So it's nice to hear about Nigeria, about the historical cases, and it's really enriching.
Right, and it's the idea is like this interdisciplinary scope. So
exactly.
Hopefully that's been also pretty reflected.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a range of different views, a range of different scholars from different disciplines. And that adds and really enriches the discussions, taking it beyond the traditional politics, anthropology, sociological approaches that have dominated the discipline. And I think that's really important.
That's great to hear. So tell me a little bit more about SEPA and what does it stand for?
So SEPA is the Sectarianism, Proxies and Desectarianization Project. It's based at Lancaster. It's funded by Carnegie Corporation out of New York. And what we're trying to do essentially is look at the way in which geopolitical factors have shaped sect-based difference in Bahrain, Iraq and Lebanon. And we're looking predominantly at the rivalry between the Saudis and the Iranians and how that has empowered or perhaps seemed to empower local actors across those three case studies, looking at how those sect-based divisions and relations have evolved over time. And one of the big things that we've been doing recently is looking at this phenomenon of desectarianization. So trying to understand how and why people, groups, elites have tried to reimagine the role of sects in political, social and everyday life. So we've spent a lot of time looking at what's been happening in Lebanon and Iraq recently. And actually we started work on this idea of desectarianization about a year before everything kicked off in Lebanon and Iraq. So it was really interesting to test out some of our initial hypotheses
as
with regard to exactly.
Played out. So actually, what sparked the idea of a desectarianization project before the protests happened?
So I think there's this traditional normative assumption that sectarianism is bad, right? We've seen what happens in Iraq, we've seen it in Lebanon and elsewhere, that sect-based divisions have traditionally led to violence. So we started reflecting on whether there should be or there could be an unwinding or an untangling of these sect-based divisions. And we thought that the name desectarianization would be quite an appropriate way of untangling some of these.
So it wasn't like an event or some process you saw playing out in the Middle East. It was kind of
it was an intellectual project.
Yeah, it was more
really
theoretical.
Yeah. So it was, I guess it was built in response to Hashim Pastel's sectarianization thesis, which is framing the process of cultivating sect-based divisions as a constructed process, a sectarianizing process. Right. And so we thought that, well, if it can be constructed, then perhaps it can be deconstructed.
Right.
And so the idea was to reflect on whether this was possible, if it was possible, has it happened before? How has it happened? How might it happen? Is it a good thing? What type of involvement should academics, outsiders, local actors play? And how would it actually play out in the region? And we were reflecting on these theoretical, conceptual, historical events. And then people took to the streets in Lebanon and Iraq.
And just made your day.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been wonderful to see. We've had people out there. I'm due to go out there very soon.
Okay.
And
So you do work in Lebanon?
I do work in Lebanon,
okay.
yeah.
That's great. So basically, you're seeing some of these processes play out in real life, and there's ongoing, presumably ongoing research projects on these.
Exactly.
So is it a collaborative thing between different affiliates, or?
So it's quite an organic project, I guess, that I've been lucky enough to draw on some wonderful scholars and excellent academic expertise from friends and colleagues from across the world, people who are really the go-to experts on sect-based divisions, sectarianism, and other related disciplines. including many of the people that you've got here as your discussants. So Morten and Toby, Basel Saluk, Stacey Strobel, and people like that, which has led to a really interesting multidisciplinary set of discussions about the hows, whys, whens, whats of sectarianism, of desectarianization, and the types of relationships that are involved. And so we've added to that a real interesting set of geopolitical discussions. So Edward Wasnich, who's the deputy director of the project, has added some really interesting stuff about the role of geopolitics in the way that these local issues are playing out in the context of changing geopolitical forces and contexts and rhythms and currents.
It's kind of reversing the causality.
So, exactly, yeah.
That's very interesting. Well, hopefully the winter school can kind of add to SEPA's overall scope.
It already has,
be in discussion with some of the Arab scholars on the same topic.
It already has, and I plan to speak with some of the participants about getting them involved and getting them over to our conference in April, and it'd be great to continue some of these discussions. It's been really interesting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Simon, and we're very happy that you were able to join us.
Thank you for having me again.